You'll regret this." Barbara shrieked when my wife refused to hand over $90 for one of her absurd HOA fines. But here's where things took a shocking turn. When the cops showed up, instead of backing Barbara, they stepped away from her. Why? Because my wife isn't who Barbara thought she was. And by the end, Barbara would regret ever dialing 911. Can you guess who my wife really is? Stay with me, because this story gets darker than you'd expect. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Listen HOA Stories so you never miss the most twisted HOA battles. 3 months ago, Amy and I bought a house at 421 Willow Court. It was beautiful, though a bit run down. The price was too good to pass up, and the seller practically shoved the keys into our hands at closing. "Fresh start," Amy said, smiling as she signed the papers. She just landed a big promotion in a government role she didn't talk much about. New job, new home, new neighborhood. What could go wrong? Famous last words. The first week was perfect. We unpacked, met a few friendly neighbors, and started settling in. That's when Barbara Garcia showed up. I was fixing the mailbox when she marched over, clipboard in hand. Mid-50s, sharp bob haircut. That fake smile plastered on her face, the type who definitely had live, laugh, love signs in every room. "Welcome to Maplewood," she said, voice all sugar but no warmth. "I'm Barbara, HOA president. I like to greet new homeowners personally." Her eyes were already scanning my yard like a hawk circling prey. "Larry, nice to meet you," I said, forcing a smile. She glanced at the house. "This is a special property. The previous owners, let's just say they didn't value the rules, and there were consequences." She tapped her clipboard like a warning shot. "Here's your welcome packet. 300 pages of guidelines. I've highlighted the important sections." That night, Amy flipped through the binder. Her eyebrows shot up. "Listen to this: vehicles must be parked facing east to maintain uniform appearance." I laughed. "Who writes this stuff?" Amy's face darkened. She seemed obsessed with the previous owners. "Did you catch what she said?" "Just that they ignored rules and faced consequences," I replied. Amy was already pulling out her laptop. 2 hours later, she leaned back, troubled. "The Andersons. Family of 4. Lived here 6 years until their daughter Emma had a medical emergency. Severe allergic reaction. But the ambulance couldn't get through because someone had parked across their driveway. By the time they reached her, it was too late. She survived, but with permanent complications. They moved out 3 months later." "That's awful," I whispered. "Do they know who blocked the driveway?" Amy shook her head. "Report doesn't say. But here's the kicker. Barbara filed 12 HOA violations against them after the accident. Fined them $800 for installing a wheelchair ramp. Daily penalties stacked on top." My stomach dropped. "She fined them? For making their home wheelchair accessible?" Amy's eyes narrowed. "Larry, I think we know why this house sold so cheap." The next morning, while I was measuring for new house numbers, Barbara appeared again like she had radar for noncompliance. "Morning, Larry," she said sweetly. "You did submit an architectural modification form, right?" I blinked. "For house numbers?" "Any external change requires approval, Section 43. I'll let it slide this time, but next could mean fines." I forced a polite smile. "Barbara, can I ask about the previous owners?" Her face went cold. They were difficult people. Constant violations. That accident, she paused, her grip tightening on the clipboard. If neighbors followed rules, that child's suffering could have been prevented. When she walked away, I texted Amy. She just blamed the accident on someone parking the wrong way. Amy's reply came instantly. "Good. Keep her talking. I'm digging into something. That evening, Amy was knee-deep in files, eyes glued to the screen. The Andersons tried to file a complaint after the accident. Guess who dismissed it? Barbara. She chaired the board. And look, she's been trying to buy this house for years. They refused every offer. The pieces clicked together. She wanted this house. The accident gave her leverage. Amy's jaw tightened. Larry, I don't think Barbara was just a bystander that night. From then on, Barbara escalated daily. Grass height, trash can placement, even the angle of our garden hose. Amy documented everything: photos, videos, timestamps. This isn't harassment, she muttered. It's a pattern, and she was right. 6 families had moved in 3 years. Every one of them left after clashing with Barbara. Everyone from this side of the street, the same side that saw Emma's accident. Amy uncovered property records showing Barbara's name tied to failed purchase offers. She's rewriting history, Amy said one night, showing me a recording of Barbara at a community meeting. On stage, she painted herself as the hero, claiming her strict rules were the reason accidents like Emma's wouldn't happen again. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was erasing her own role. Then, one Thursday, the game changed. I opened the door to find Barbara with backup, a man in a tailored suit. Larry, she said, her smile sharp. This is Councilman Bradley. He's here to help mediate. His handshake was oily, his tone polished. We've had some compliance concerns. Nothing we can't resolve. Barbara's eyes glittered. 26 violations in 3 weeks. She slapped down a binder filled with photos of trash cans, grass measurements, even Amy's car parked facing west. Bradley slid a laminated sheet across the table. First warning's free. Then $30, $60, and $90 for each repeat offense. You're sitting at $1,140 in fines, Barbara added smoothly, plus a $2,000 special assessment for road repairs. Due in 30 days, I gaped. You're extorting us. Bradley's voice stayed calm. Documented, legal, binding. Barbara leaned closer, eyes cold. Or you could sell. The market's hot. I know buyers. That was it, the real agenda. I clenched my fists. We're not selling. Barbara's smile turned razor sharp. Then follow the rules, Larry, or suffer the consequences. When they left, I called Amy. Barbara just hit us with over $3,000 in fines and brought a councilman as her muscle. Amy's voice was steady. Did you record it? Every second. Good, she said. Don't pay a dime. This just got interesting, and that was only the beginning. Barbara thought she had us cornered, but Amy had been building something far bigger behind the scenes. You don't want to miss what happens next. Hit subscribe to listen HOA stories so you're the first to see how this HOA nightmare explodes. 3 a.m. and the driveway glowed with streetlight. I watched Amy on the phone through the bedroom window. Quick words, clipped tone. Yes, I know the exposure. No, she can't find out yet. Not until Tuesday morning. She kissed my forehead, turned, and slipped out into the night. What do you actually do? I whispered later. She smiled and kissed me back. Let her think she's winning. When she gets cocky, that's when we move. Tuesday came in heavy and gray. Amy took a half day off, saying she needed paperwork time. She wound up in the garage organizing boxes when Barbara glided into view, Prius idling, clipboard at the ready. She's here, I called. Amy pulled on jeans and a plain academy tee. Stay inside but keep recording, she told me. Trust me. I positioned myself by the living room window. Barbara strode up like she owned the sidewalk, brandishing a yellow notice like a warrant. Neighbors pretended to water lawns. Some pretended not to notice. Barbara's voice cut across the yard. Amy Scott, you owe payment immediately. Amy opened the door, serene. Good morning, Barbara. $90, right now. Barbara snapped the notice full of petty citations, lawn height, mailbox color, directional parking. I'm not paying fraudulent fines from an illegal HOA, Amy said flatly. Barbara's face flushed. These fines are binding. She spat. This HOA charter is valid. Amy tilted her head. No, it expired 2 years ago. You have no legal authority. A red vein pulsed at Barbara's throat. Bradley says, she began. Bradley says whatever you pay him to say, Amy cut in. Barbara's hands shook as she dialed. I'm calling the police. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. Officer Thompson stepped out, tired, professional. Barbara rushed him. This resident refuses to pay $90 in HOA fines. Thompson exhaled. Ma'am, HOA disputes are civil matters. We don't make arrests for that. Barbara insisted she'd been threatened. She threatened me, she cried into the officer's ear. Amy smiled politely and said, Officer, may I show you something? Amy opened her wallet slowly. Thompson's pupils widened. On the card, in crisp print, Chief Amy Scott. He stepped back. The neighborhood inhaled. Barbara's knees buckled. What? You're the new police chief? Amy nodded. 6 weeks on the job. Barbara's triumphant grin drained. Amy continued steady and clear. You filed a false police report for a civil dispute. That's a misdemeanor, Barbara flailed. I was protecting the community. The officers exchanged glances. Amy didn't stop. She produced bank statements, property records, timestamps. Show me the files you've been keeping, she told Barbara. Eyes in the crowd widened as Amy read off names houses Barbara had harassed. Families who'd been driven out, links to the Andersons and the accident. Helen from across the street spoke up. Barbara, you were there the day the ambulance couldn't get in. You said it was a delivery truck. Barbara's voice turned small. Amy tightened the screws. Why did you target witnesses? Why did families with views of the Anderson driveway get fined until they moved? The crowd shifted like a wave. This wasn't just a petty tyrant anymore. It hinted at something darker. Thompson looked at Barbara, then to Amy. For now, Ms. Garcia, you are free to go, he said. But don't leave town and do not access HOA bank accounts or computers. You're under investigation. Barbara sputtered threats. You'll regret this. I have powerful friends. Amy raised an eyebrow. That sounded like a threat. Officer, did you hear that? Thompson did. Barbara fled, squealing down the street. Neighbors clustered, buzzing. The charter expired? Helen asked. She lied to us? Amy nodded. Meeting tomorrow night. Bring everything. Spread the word. I stepped outside as the last of the cops left. Amy hugged me and grinned. Surprise, she said. Wanted to see how far Barbara would push it before she walked into her own trap. Then Amy's phone pinged. Her face went cold as she read the text. She just accessed something she shouldn't have, Amy said. Something that could ruin more than our reputation. What would you do if your HOA president had been quietly building files to throw neighbors off their properties? Amy chained her moves like a chess master while Barbara played checkers. By dawn, the neighborhood was a mess of social media posts. Barbara ranting about corruption, claiming the police were biased. People were divided and unsettled. Amy scrolled with coffee, half amused, half serious. She's panicking, she said. Good. Panic people make bad calls. She's predictable. When cornered, she lashes out. Worried about what she'll post next? Me too. That's why I asked Thompson to keep an eye on her house. My phone buzzed. Larry, heads up, Helen said. Barbara is going door to door with a petition. She wants you both out as chief. Let her, Amy replied when I told her. Every signature just becomes another record of her harassment. By noon, Barbara had moved past petitions. She launched a website, The Truth About Amy Scott, slick, expensive-looking, a seamless mix of facts and fiction. Sure, Amy had worked in Denver, and yes, her ex-partner Tom Rodriguez had died, both truths twisted into a smear meant to terrify the neighborhood. "This is defamation," I said. Amy's fingers flew over the screen. "It's worse. She's using my personnel file." My jaw dropped. "That's illegal access to law enforcement databases. Federal offense. Bradley must be involved." Amy called Thompson. "Is Bradley at City Hall?" she asked. "Bring him in," she told the officer. That afternoon, Barbara booked the community center and promised shocking revelations about our new police chief. Amy suited up in uniform. "You're not going," I said. "Of course I am," she said. Exactly what I wanted. The room filled. Barbara rolled the projector and laid printed copies of her site on every chair. "Thank you for coming," she began, breath tight. "I'll show you the truth." She clicked slides Amy's photo, carefully edited headlines from Denver, curated snippets that painted Amy as a menace. Amy rose from the back in full uniform and called out, "Please continue. Mrs. Garcia, you're doing my job for me." Barbara's hands trembled. "You can't be here," she stammered. "This is a private meeting with public records." "Public records?" Amy asked. "Personnel files aren't public." "How did you get mine?" Barbara hedged. Amy pulled out her phone and played a recording. Bradley's voice echoed through the hall. "Barbara paid me $5,000 to get the files. Said she needed leverage. I used my admin access on the safety committee," Bradley confessed. "I'm sorry. I know it was wrong." The clicker fell from Barbara's hand. Confession, plain as day. Amy stepped forward. "Mrs. Garcia has committed federal crimes while trying to ruin me," she announced. Then she switched the slide. Financial documents lit the screen. The HOA account, nearly $500,000 collected in 2 years. Where did it go? The crowd leaned in. Payments to recommended buyers, contractors who never did the work. Transfers to Barbara herself, $60,000 in fees for an HOA that technically doesn't exist. Barbara screamed. Amy answered calmly. "Those records were seized under warrant this morning." Amy laid out the pattern. Every family Barbara targeted had a clear view of the Anderson driveway the day the ambulance couldn't reach them. 14 minutes, Amy said quietly. "That's how long Barbara spent writing a garden hose citation while Emma Anderson struggled for breath." The room went stone silent. "They deserved what?" Amy asked when Barbara faltered. Barbara tried to escape, but Officer Thompson stepped in front of the exit. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Garcia?" "False arrest," Barbara shouted. "I'll sue." Thompson cuffed her as he read the charges. Fraud, embezzlement, illegal access to law enforcement files, identity theft, conspiracy. She raged about property values falling without her guidance. Helen stood up and answered for the neighborhood. We needed neighbors, not fear. They led Barbara out as she screamed. "You'll regret this," she vowed. "You'll see." But the crowd had already found its voice. Amy's phone buzzed. Her face went white. She said, "A dead man's switch," she whispered. "Check your email." Right now, my inbox flooded. Dozens of messages from the HOA account, all sent in the last hour. Subject lines like "what your neighbors don't want you to know" and "the truth about Maplewood Estates, full documentation attached." Amy scrolled. Her brow darkened. "She made bail," she said. "How?" I frowned. "Probably family or cash bail. Someone bailed her out fast." The emails were a scorched earth dump. Affairs. Debt, medical records, secret bankruptcies. Hidden problems. A weaponized data breach. By early morning, those posts spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. Barbara was up all night posting, claiming corruption and a targeted chief. People argued online. At breakfast, Amy sipped coffee, watching the feed. "She's panicking," she said with a tight smile. Panicked people make mistakes. But Barbara's move was systematic and ugly. That email dump used the HOA's mailing list and private information to humiliate neighbors. It was a nuclear option: destroy reputations and drag everyone into chaos. We had to act fast. The files Barbara leaked were explosive: private medical notes, financial records, old legal filings, all weaponized to intimidate. Neighbors called, asking if the posts were real. "No," Amy said. "They're meant to distract and to hurt." She began documenting everything: screenshots, timestamps, preserved copies. We contacted Thompson and the city attorneys. The atmosphere tightened. People slept with lights on and phones at their sides. The plan to unmask Barbara had worked, but now she was fighting back with everything she had. Our whole block's private lives, collected by years of illegal spying, had just been detonated in one furious stroke. "She's been watching everyone," I said, stomach twisting as more messages kept arriving and I logged screenshots. Amy's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Perfect," she said, eyes cold. "She's handing us evidence. Every email is another charge: wire fraud, cyber harassment, extortion." She thumbed her phone. "Thompson, yes, we're seeing the spam. Cyber Squad online. She's using the home IP, no VPN, not even hiding it." My phone lit up with Helen's voice, raw and shaking. "Larry, she posted about Robert's old affair. It's from 5 years ago. We fixed it. The kids will see this." Calls came in fast, secrets exposed. Marriages fraying, people threatening to leave to escape the shame Barbara had spewed. I felt sick watching the neighborhood tear itself apart. "Stop her?" I said. Amy smiled without warmth. "I am, by letting her keep typing." She spun the laptop around. "The FBI is monitoring. Every mail is archived, traced. She's building our case for us." By dawn, the damage was catastrophic. The community page was a war zone of accusations. News vans rolled in, scenting scandal. The headline read like a punch: HOA President's Revenge Dumps Private Files. National outlets sniffed interest. Barbara hadn't just burned bridges. She'd flamethrowered the whole street. Then she went live. Wearing yesterday's suit like armor gone to seed, mascara smudged, hair like static, she smiled like a hostage with a script. "Good morning, Maplewood," she croaked. "Want the truth about your neighbors? I've got more." Comments piled on, outrage, disbelief, and Barbara plowed ahead anyway. Amy watched clinical. "Let her rant," she said. "Everything she says is evidence." On camera, Barbara waved printouts, screaming about Amy Scott's past in Denver and the tragic death of a partner. Distorted facts twisted into smear material. Helen, steady as a rock, walked into Barbara's frame. The feed shifted. "You made me dig up my husband's ashes because the roses were the wrong kind," Helen said, face streaked with tears. "You stood there with your clipboard while I sobbed." The chat exploded. Neighbors streamed themselves, opening their doors and walking into Barbara's living room. One by one, they confronted her live. The surreal scene played out for thousands to see, victims confronting their tormentor in real time. Barbara tried the old defense: "You're trespassing." The crowd kept walking through the open door. "I'll call the police," she whined. Amy, suddenly in frame with perfect timing, smiled at the camera. "Please do," she said. "Help us document this." The live feed showed the facades she'd built collapsing. Years of petty cruelty, fines, citations, Ruined celebrations were suddenly on display. "You find my daughter's birthday balloons," one neighbor cried. "You made us repaint 4 times," another yelled. "The mask was gone. You don't understand," Barbara sobbed. "Without rules, property values. Shut up about property values." Someone shouted. "You let a child nearly die over a citation," Helen reminded the room, voice low, each syllable like a hammer. Amy cut through the hysteria. "You enforced fines to silence witnesses. Your money silenced families." Under the pressure, Barbara froze, then snapped. "Fine. You want the truth?" "I blocked their driveway." The admission landed like a stone. For a moment the live chat went silent. "You let a child almost die," Helen said slowly, each word a verdict. "Because you couldn't stop writing a citation." The truth hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Amy turned to the stunned faces in the room. "Barbara Garcia," she said, calm and loud, "you are under arrest." The crowd exhaled as officers approached, but the night was not over. Amy's phone buzzed and she paled. "She said a dead man's switch," she whispered. "Check your email. Now." My inbox flooded with attachments. A scorched earth dump of our neighborhood's worst private things, affairs. Bankruptcy filings, medical notes, court papers, all weaponized and sent to everyone. Barbara had not just shouted. She had detonated the equivalent of a data nuke. We watched the fallout. People sobbed as old secrets surfaced. Employers called. Friends recoiled. The neighborhood was bleeding shame. Yet Amy stayed methodical. "This is evidence," she said, fingers steady. "Every message is logged. Every delivery traceable." She thought she could bury us by dragging us into the mud. Instead, she's handing us the grenade with the pin still in her hand. Neighbors called to ask if the dumps were for real. "They are," Amy said. "And they were stolen from city systems she unlawfully accessed. We'll get them back on paper and we'll prosecute." She began capturing every post, every share, time-stomping everything. We coordinated with Thompson and Municipal Council. People barricaded email and social feeds. It was ugly, but one thing cemented. Barbara's reckless revenge showed how far she'd go. Overnight, the community moved from panic to planning. Where at first stunned people considered fleeing, by morning they were taking screenshots, sharing passwords, backing up evidence. The tide changed. Barbara's nuclear option had ignited a new resolve. She tried to crush people by spreading shame. Instead, she'd provided the smoking case that would tear her operation apart. "You're under arrest again," Amy said flatly. "This time for cyber terrorism, wire fraud, and for breaking your bail conditions." Double quotes. Barbara, still clutching her phone like it was a lifeline, shook her head. "This is my house. You can't." Broadcasting crimes, harassing victims, hacking into HOA systems you were explicitly ordered not to touch. Amy cut her off. She gave a sharp nod to Thompson, who stepped forward with backup. "Take her in." And this time no bail. The cuff snapped shut. Barbara twisted, eyes wide, defiance laced with panic. She glared into the live stream camera, voice jagged but clear. "Check your property values in 6 months. You'll beg me to come back. Without me, it'll be chaos." The feed ended there, cutting out with a final shot of her being hauled away in handcuffs, her reign collapsing in real time. Over 10,000 people had tuned in live. Barbara had tried to destroy her neighbors, but instead she destroyed herself, publicly and permanently. My phone buzzed. A message from Amy. "Federal prosecutors are taking over. Minimum 20 years guaranteed." Neighbors filed out of Barbara's house one by one. Some were still trembling from secrets exposed, some angry over years of surveillance. But underneath all that was something I hadn't seen in years: relief. For the first time, the community felt united. Then Helen tugged my sleeve. Her expression was grave. "Larry, there's something you need to hear." "About Amy." She glanced around nervously. Barbara wasn't wrong about Denver, but she only had half the truth. She reached into her purse and unfolded a faded newspaper clipping. "Your wife isn't just a police chief. She's been hunting people like Barbara for years. And the FBI isn't here just because of Barbara. There's more." I stood frozen, my mind spinning. My wife running a federal sting operation? I thought I knew her. Now I wasn't sure of anything. Have you ever found out your spouse was living an entirely different life? Comment below. I need to know I'm not alone. Friday morning came like something out of an action thriller. I woke not to birdsong, but to the chop of heavy blades. Not traffic helicopters, federal ones. Black shapes circled overhead, their spotlights piercing the curtains. My window rattled with each pass. "Amy?" I reached for her. The bed was cold. She was already gone. Pulling the curtains back, my jaw dropped. Black SUVs lined the streets like chess pieces, every angle covered. Agents in FBI windbreakers moved with coordinated precision. My quiet cul-de-sac looked like the set of a federal raid documentary. My phone buzzed again. "Stay inside. Watch the news." Amy's text read. Channel 9 flashed a breaking news banner. "Massive FBI raid. Maplewood corruption probe." Cameras showed agents hauling box after box from Barbara's house. Federal authorities are executing warrants at multiple sites in connection to widespread HOA corruption. The anchor announced. Another ping from Amy. "Check Barbara's website." I typed in the infamous domain. Instead of Barbara's lies about Amy, a bold message filled the screen. "This domain has been seized by the FBI as part of an ongoing investigation into wire fraud, racketeering, and corruption." The live broadcast cut to multiple simultaneous raids. Bradley the councilman dragged out in pajamas. City Hall emptied box by box. The HOA's management company locked down. Barbara's favorite real estate firm swarmed by agents. The scale was staggering. This wasn't about one corrupt HOA anymore. It was an entire network. And then Amy appeared on national TV. She stood at a podium in full dress uniform, flanked by federal prosecutors and senior FBI officials. She looked exhausted, but resolute. "Good morning. I'm Chief Amy Scott, working with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. For 8 weeks, we've been investigating a criminal enterprise hiding behind homeowners associations to run racketeering, extortion, and money laundering schemes." Behind her, a screen lit up with an organizational chart so sprawling it made my head spin. This wasn't Barbara alone. This was a web stretching across counties. "In the last 5 years," Amy continued, "this network has stolen approximately $2.4 million from homeowners." Jaw dropped. $2.4 million. 6 HOAs. Dozens of victims. "To date, we've arrested 12 individuals," she continued, her voice steel. 4 HOA presidents, 3 city officials, 2 real estate developers, and 3 property managers. More arrests are coming. Reporters shouted questions. "What about Barbara Garcia specifically?" Amy's face hardened. Mrs. Garcia's crimes were particularly heinous. She didn't just steal money. She weaponized trust. She silenced witnesses. She destroyed families. And when cornered, she tried to obliterate her entire neighborhood with illegally obtained private data. That level of corruption will not go unpunished. The news cut to footage of Barbara being led away not to county lockup this time, but into the custody of U.S. Marshals. No bail. No loopholes. Helen called me, her voice shaking. "Larry, the FBI is here. They want my statement." "Tell them everything," I said. Still reeling as I watched more evidence boxes carried out. By noon, federal accountants revealed the full picture. Barbara had funneled nearly $500,000 in fake fines, plus another $300,000 stashed in offshore accounts. Families had been ruined while she secretly padded an escape plan she'd never get to use. The empire was crumbling. And this time, it wasn't just Maplewood watching, it was the entire country. This case just exploded into a nationwide scandal. Hit subscribe to listen HOA stories, because the next part is where everything changes. Amy slipped home briefly for lunch. She looked drained, but there was an unmistakable spark in her eyes, the kind of tired you only see after carrying a mission for months and finally cracking it open. 8 weeks? I asked, still stunned. You've been running a federal investigation that long? She shook her head. Longer. The DOJ first pulled me in back in Denver. Barbara was already under their microscope, but they needed someone inside. Becoming police chief here, it was all part of the plan. My stomach twisted. So what? Our marriage was just cover? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Amy stopped, placed both hands firmly on my face, forcing me to meet her eyes. No, our marriage is the only real thing in all of this. I couldn't tell you everything, but I never lied about us. Not once. What happens now? I asked cautiously. Now? Barbara faces decades. Minimum 20 years, maybe life. The Andersons are filing civil claims. Other HOAs are dissolving. And best of all, she allowed herself a small smile. The first genuine one I'd seen in weeks. Every stolen dollar will be returned with interest. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, stood, and adjusted her jacket. I have to go. Press conference at 2. The Attorney General is flying in. I blinked. The Attorney General? Amy nodded. Barbara's collapse exposed something massive. HOAs across the country are riddled with corruption. And thanks to her, we finally have the blueprint to dismantle it. That afternoon, it became official. The Attorney General announced Operation Neighborhood Watch, a nationwide sweep into HOA corruption. Maplewood was now the case study. Barbara's mugshot became the face of HOA fraud. Every channel ran the story. Late-night hosts mocked it. Documentaries picked it up. On social media, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Barbara, hashtag HOA tyrant, hashtag property values. But the internet truly ignited when Barbara, escorted to federal custody, locked eyes with a news camera and snapped, "Property values. What about property values?" She screamed, her voice cracking as marshals shoved her forward. Without me, it'll all collapse into chaos. Within hours, memes, songs, and t-shirts flooded the web. What about property values? Became the punchline to every joke about petty tyrants. Influencers filmed skits reenacting her meltdown. That evening, Maplewood gathered for something it hadn't seen in years, a neighborhood celebration. No permits, no approvals, no HOA clipboard lurking in the shadows. Just music, food, and joy. For the first time, people were free to live without fear of fines. Helen raised a plastic cup of wine. To Amy, who saved us from the tyrant of the clipboard. Amy lifted her own cup, smiling softly. To all of us, for standing together. For finding our courage again. The block party swelled, kids playing past curfew, music blasting above approved decibels, dogs running leash-free. Freedom was loud, messy, and beautiful. I wrapped my arm around Amy. Any regrets? She leaned into me with a grin. One. What's that? I always wanted to paint our mailbox purple. Just to watch Barbara lose her mind. I laughed. So paint it purple. Who's going to stop you now? Amy laughed too, the sound mingling with neighbors' joy. You know what? Tomorrow morning, the purplest purple we can find. As we stood watching Maplewood heal, I realized Barbara had been right about one thing. There was chaos. But it wasn't the collapse she promised. It was the chaos of kids being kids, of neighbors finally living without fear, of music spilling into the night. The kind of chaos that feels like freedom. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. Amy nodded for me to answer. Mr. Scott. The voice was sharp, commanding. This is Assistant Director Smith, FBI. We need to discuss your wife's real assignment. The one she hasn't told you about. Barbara Garcia was never the main target. She was just a doorway. Tell me, how much do you really know about why you moved to Maplewood? Monday came like the end of a long, brutal chapter. The federal courthouse towered above downtown, its marble face gleaming with cold authority. Inside, Barbara Garcia was about to face true judgment, not a suburban HOA meeting where she ruled by fear, but a federal judge who'd seen corruption in every form. She looked shrunken in her orange jumpsuit. The sharp suits, the clipboard, the air of power all gone. Just a hollow woman who had built her empire on intimidation and lies. The defendant faces 93 federal counts, the prosecutor began, his voice filling the chamber. Racketeering, wire fraud, cyber terrorism, identity theft, obstruction of justice. Barbara's public defender, court-appointed now that every asset had been seized, looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked, his gaze heavy. Barbara's voice was faint. Not guilty. Speak up, the judge ordered. Not guilty, she said louder. But the words rang hollow, swallowed by the mountain of evidence stacked against her. The prosecutor laid it out with brutal precision. $480,000 in fake fines. The cover-up after the Anderson incident. The families driven out. The city officials bribed. The illegal surveillance. The offshore accounts, $300,000 hidden away for an escape plan she'd never take. Your Honor, the prosecutor said firmly, this wasn't just theft. Mrs. Garcia weaponized an entire neighborhood's trust. She turned family against family. When her crime surfaced, she tried to obliterate dozens of lives with stolen personal data. This was not governance. This was tyranny masquerading as community leadership. Finally, Barbara took the stand. Even then, she couldn't admit guilt. I was protecting property values, she insisted, her voice brittle but stubborn. If people had just followed the rules, the judge slammed his gavel. Mrs. Garcia, enough. A child nearly died because you valued a citation over human life. You spent years crushing anyone who dared hold you accountable. You bribed officials, stole from families, and when exposed, you attempted to burn your entire community to the ground. That is not protection. That is cruelty. And with that, Barbara's empire ended not with authority, but with a gavel. This wasn't about protecting houses or yards. This was about one woman's obsession with control. The rules matter. Barbara's voice cracked with desperation. Without compassion, there's cruelty, the judge countered coldly. And you, Mrs. Garcia, have been exceptionally cruel. The sentence landed like a hammer. 25 years in federal prison, no parole for 15, full restitution of the $780,000 stolen, and a lifetime ban from any position of authority. She wouldn't even be able to run a school. Bake sale again. As marshals prepared to escort her away, Barbara turned toward the gallery of neighbors who had come to witness justice. Her eyes burned with wild desperation. You'll see, she screamed, her voice echoing through the marble courtroom. Property values will collapse. The neighborhood will rot. You'll beg for me back. The doors shut, cutting off her voice, but her words hung in the air like a curse. On the courthouse steps, Helen spoke for all of us. She still doesn't get it. It was never about property values. It was about people. About community. About living without fear of a clipboard full of fake violations. The press swarmed, but most neighbors just wanted to go home and start rebuilding. Ironically, property values didn't drop, they skyrocketed. Turns out, people pay more to live in a community where neighbors support instead of spy on each other. Realtors even started marketing Maplewood as the neighborhood that beat corruption. The Andersons moved back. Emma, now 13, walked proudly with only a slight limp, surrounded by a community that had once failed her but now rallied around her. A fundraiser for her recovery raised over $50,000 in a single week. What Barbara had tried to divide came back stronger than ever. Halloween became a festival, giant inflatables, wild decorations, no fines, no restrictions. Someone always hung a sign that read, "Chaos, welcome here." It became Maplewood's motto, a badge of honor. "Don't be a Barbara" became a national saying, taught in real estate circles and HOA board trainings. The FBI investigation launched from our case spread nationwide, dismantling dozens of corrupt HOAs. But the real victory wasn't in arrests, it was in the small freedoms. Kids drawing chalk on sidewalks without fear. Mailboxes painted in colors that made people smile. Gardens full of personality. Families free to just live. That night, Amy sat on the bed with a sealed FBI envelope. "They told me to open this after sentencing," she whispered. When she read it, her face shifted from pale to stunned. "Larry, Barbara has a daughter. She's been writing her every week in prison. And she just applied to law school, specializing in HOA law. 5 years later, Maplewood thrived. Gardens bloomed, homes were unique, and neighbors gathered monthly, not for rules or fines, but for food, laughter, and connection. Barbara, meanwhile, served her sentence. On release, she was barred from leadership, barred from finances, barred from power. A lifetime of restrictions. Her reign was over. The neighborhood didn't crumble like she predicted. It flourished in freedom. And that's the lesson, friends. A community's true value isn't in rules or uniform lawns. It's in humanity, compassion, and the courage to stand together. The same meeting room where Barbara once dictated rules now hosted potlucks, birthdays, and laughter. "All right, everyone," Helen called warmly. "Halloween's coming up. Who's in for decorations?" Hands shot up immediately. The Andersons offered to coordinate trick-or-treat routes. David volunteered his garage for a haunted house build, and ideas flowed freely. Nobody worried about fines or citations anymore. "Any restrictions on decorations?" A newcomer asked nervously. They didn't know the history. The whole room burst into laughter, not cruel, just understanding. "Honey," Helen said kindly, "the only rule here is have fun. Though maybe avoid terrifying the mailman again." Jim's zombie animatronic almost sent him into early retirement last year. Laughter filled the room. Jim grinned, already planning this year's display. After the meeting, Amy and I walked home beneath streetlights decorated with whatever neighbors felt like hanging bird feeders, wind chimes, even a disco ball that scattered rainbow flecks across the sidewalk. Miss the old uniformity? I teased. "God, no." Amy squeezed my hand. "This is what a neighborhood should be. Messy, human, alive." A car rolled past slowly. Out-of-state plates. A cautious driver. Amy stiffened instinctively. Then the window lowered. My stomach dropped. It was Barbara. 5 years had aged her 15. The perfect bob was gone, replaced by graying hair and deep lines carved by prison and guilt. Her voice was no longer commanding, just fragile. "I know I'm violating the restraining order," she whispered. I needed to see it. "The neighborhood. Before I leave town? Leave?" I asked despite myself. "My sister in California, she's giving me a job. A chance." I wanted to apologize. To everyone. But especially the Andersons. "Is Emma?" "She's in high school now." "Doing well." Amy said carefully. Barbara's hands trembled on the steering wheel. Tears spilled freely. Every day in prison I saw her face. The sirens. Her mother screaming. I became a monster trying to prevent chaos, but I only created more pain. I hurt children. I destroyed families. I can't undo it. But I'm sorry. Your Honor, the prosecutor said firmly, this wasn't just theft. Mrs. Garcia weaponized an entire neighborhood's trust. She turned family against family. When her crime surfaced, she tried to obliterate dozens of lives with stolen personal data. This was not governance. This was tyranny masquerading as community leadership. Finally, Barbara took the stand. Even then, she couldn't admit guilt. I was protecting property values, she insisted, her voice brittle but stubborn. If people had just followed the rules, the judge slammed his gavel. Mrs. Garcia, enough. A child nearly died because you valued a citation over human life. You spent years crushing anyone who dared hold you accountable. You bribed officials, stole from families, and when exposed, you attempted to burn your entire community to the ground. That is not protection. That is cruelty. And with that, Barbara's empire ended not with authority, but with a gavel. This wasn't about protecting houses or yards. This was about one woman's obsession with control. The rules matter. Barbara's voice cracked with desperation. Without compassion, there's cruelty, the judge countered coldly. And you, Mrs. Garcia, have been exceptionally cruel. The sentence landed like a hammer. 25 years in federal prison, no parole for 15, full restitution of the $780,000 stolen, and a lifetime ban from any position of authority. She wouldn't even be able to run a school. Bake sale again. As marshals prepared to escort her away, Barbara turned toward the gallery of neighbors who had come to witness justice. Her eyes burned with wild desperation. "You'll see," she screamed, her voice echoing through the marble courtroom. "Property values will collapse. The neighborhood will rot. You'll beg for me back." The doors shut, cutting off her voice, but her words hung in the air like a curse. On the courthouse steps, Helen spoke for all of us. She still doesn't get it. It was never about property values. It was about people. About community. About living without fear of a clipboard full of fake violations. The press swarmed, but most neighbors just wanted to go home and start rebuilding. Ironically, property values didn't drop, they skyrocketed. Turns out, people pay more to live in a community where neighbors support instead of spy on each other. Realtors even started marketing Maplewood as the neighborhood that beat corruption. The Andersons moved back. Emma, now 13, walked proudly with only a slight limp, surrounded by a community that had once failed her but now rallied around her. A fundraiser for her recovery raised over $50,000 in a single week. What Barbara had tried to divide came back stronger than ever. Halloween became a festival. Giant inflatables, wild decorations, no fines, no restrictions. Someone always hung a sign that read, "Chaos, welcome here." It became Maplewood's motto, a badge of honor. "Don't be a Barbara" became a national saying, taught in real estate circles and HOA board trainings. The FBI investigation launched from our case spread nationwide, dismantling dozens of corrupt HOAs. But the real victory wasn't in arrests, it was in the small freedoms. Kids drawing chalk on sidewalks without fear. Mailboxes painted in colors that made people smile. Gardens full of personality. Families free to just live. That night, Amy sat on the bed with a sealed FBI envelope. "They told me to open this after sentencing," she whispered. When she read it, her face shifted from pale to stunned. "Larry, Barbara has a daughter. She's been writing her every week in prison. And she just applied to law school, specializing in HOA law. 5 years later, Maplewood thrived. Gardens bloomed, homes were unique, and neighbors gathered monthly, not for rules or fines, but for food, laughter, and connection. Barbara, meanwhile, served her sentence. On release, she was barred from leadership, barred from finances, barred from power. A lifetime of restrictions. Her reign was over. The neighborhood didn't crumble like she predicted. It flourished in freedom. And that's the lesson, friends. A community's true value isn't in rules or uniform lawns. It's in humanity, compassion, and the courage to stand together. The same meeting room where Barbara once dictated rules now hosted potlucks, birthdays, and laughter. "All right, everyone," Helen called warmly. "Halloween's coming up. Who's in for decorations?" Hands shot up immediately. The Andersons offered to coordinate trick-or-treat routes. David volunteered his garage for a haunted house build, and ideas flowed freely. Nobody worried about fines or citations anymore. "Any restrictions on decorations?" A newcomer asked nervously. They didn't know the history. The whole room burst into laughter. "Not cruel, just understanding." "Honey," Helen said kindly, "the only rule here is have fun. Though maybe avoid terrifying the mailman again." Jim's zombie animatronic almost sent him into early retirement last year. Laughter filled the room. Jim grinned, already planning this year's display. After the meeting, Amy and I walked home beneath streetlights decorated with whatever neighbors felt like hanging bird feeders, wind chimes, even a disco ball that scattered rainbow flecks across the sidewalk. Miss the old uniformity? I teased. "God, no." Amy squeezed my hand. "This is what a neighborhood should be. Messy, human, alive." A car rolled past slowly. Out-of-state plates. A cautious driver. Amy stiffened instinctively. Then the window lowered. My stomach dropped. It was Barbara. 5 years had aged her 15. The perfect bob was gone, replaced by graying hair and deep lines carved by prison and guilt. Her voice was no longer commanding, just fragile. "I know I'm violating the restraining order," she whispered. I needed to see it. "The neighborhood. Before I leave town?" "Leave?" I asked despite myself. "My sister in California, she's giving me a job." A chance. I wanted to apologize. To everyone. But especially the Andersons. "Is Emma?" "She's in high school now." "Doing well," Amy said carefully. Barbara's hands trembled on the steering wheel. Tears spilled freely. Every day in prison I saw her face. The sirens. Her mother screaming. I became a monster trying to prevent chaos, but I only created more pain. I hurt children. I destroyed families. I can't undo it. But I'm sorry.